Hi everyone, Benjamin Yates here from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. I just wanted to make a quick follow-up video. So I just made this video that was kind of about some of my thoughts about the LMEA All-State auditions that just happened this past weekend. And so this video is specifically about horn maintenance. So I think oftentimes when we're in high school as trombone players, we're given a new valve trombone, or we're given the school valve trombone, and we're not really ever taught how to take care of it or what we should do. So some of these ideas would be great things to do before you actually go in for an audition, but they're also good things to do about once a week or every 2 weeks, just to keep your horn in really great working order. So the first thing that I want to address is the actual valve on your trombone. So we're going to be looking at the valve section as a whole. So I'm going to take the valve section actually off the bell, and what we're going to look at first is actually the back side of the valve. And what I want to do for this is actually lay this like this, and I'm going to take some heavyweight rotor oil. This is Hetman brand rotor oil. You don't have to use that. You can just use anything that's heavyweight rotor oil or spindle oil. And this actually goes on the outside of the rotor. And so where we actually put this is right in here on the spindle. And it's not going to take much, just 2 or 3 little drops like that. And then you can actually work it in by moving the valve. And it should reduce some of the clanking that happens in the valve when it gets dried out. The other thing that we're going to do is also just take a couple drops of oil and put it on each part that moves. Now your linkage may not look exactly like this linkage, but it may be pretty similar. If you have string instead of linkage, you may want to take it to a shop and make sure that that string's really working, or take it to your band director and make sure that it's really working to your best advantage. The other thing I like to do at this point is also just put a drop of oil on the spring over here by the thumb lever, just to make sure that all those moving parts are actually in good working order. The next thing that we do with this same heavyweight oil on the outside of the valve is we're going to take off the valve cap. I actually put just about 2 or 3 drops of oil in here, right on the center of that. And some valves kind of almost have an indentation that's made to keep that oil. And you can just put some oil right in there. And before we put the valve cap on, I also like to just put a couple drops on the threads for the valve cap, just to make sure that that stays nice and lubricated and doesn't get stuck on. And then I back that valve cap on and put it on. And then you can move the valve around just to work that oil in. Another thing you can do is you can actually use back pressure to move that oil into the valve, and you can actually pull out the slide that's attached to your valve without depressing the valve, kind of like that. And then you get the back pressure when you move the valve, and that'll actually suck some of that oil on into the valve and keep it working. So that's the outside of the valve. Now on the inside of the valve, what I like to do is I like to take a lighter valve oil. So this will be, for me, the Hetman synthetic 11 weight oil. You could also use piston valve oil for this, what trumpet players use or what euphonium players use. And we're going to tip our bell section upside down like this, and we're actually just going to put a few drops of this oil right in the slide receiver portion. And I like to move the valve while I'm doing this, just to make sure I'm really working that in there. That was about 6 drops. That might have been a little more than we needed, but that's okay. And I'm just kind of working that in. And then what I'm going to do is I don't want that oil to then run down into my slide when I put the horn back together and gunk up my new slide. So I'm actually going to take a rag or a paper towel and put it into the end of that slide receiver and move the valve around, and as I'm moving it around like this, that oil's all going to drop back into the bottom of the receiver, and hopefully as much of it as possible will get soaked up by my rag or my paper towel. And there's quite a bit in there, so that's good. That's good. So now my valve's working in pretty good order. It's pretty quiet. It's not going clank, clank, clank as I play my scales. which is a good thing because you don't want to distract anyone when they're listening to your scales at your All-State audition. So the next thing I need to do is make sure that my slide's in really good working order. So I'm going to set my bell section aside, grab my slide. So sometimes slides get dented, and the best thing to do for that is just take it to the shop and have them work on it. Sometimes slides get out of alignment. Again, take it to the shop and they can work it out for you. But basic slide maintenance is pretty simple, really. You take a rag. I usually take a different rag than what I use on the bell section with the oil, because I don't want to mix the oil on the slide. And you wipe down the inner part of the slide. And this is just to get any of that grimy stuff off the inner slide. I happen to have a little bit of grimy stuff on there. So now that part's basically clean. If you have a bunch of stuff that's really stuck on there, you could take some lukewarm water and even just a little bit of dish soap and work it out that way. But for the most part, you should be able to get anything off with a paper towel or a rag. Now the next part of this is we need to clean the outer slide, and this is the tricky part. So we're actually going to take a cleaning rod, which should have come with your trombone, or you could pick up at any music store, and we're going to take our cheesecloth rag and actually clean the end. What I'm going to do is very carefully thread my cheesecloth. Yes, this is literally cloth used for making cheese, or you could buy butter muslin. These are both usually available at a grocery store or at Walmart. If you want something nice that you can wash that looks more like this, you can actually just look online for butter muslin, and you'll find something like this. And I'm going to thread it through my cleaning rod. And I'm going to pull through about that much. And then I'm actually going to wrap the end of the cleaning rod with the butter muslin, so I'm sure that I don't have any exposed parts of the rod. This is basically to protect the slide. I don't want to make a hole in my slide or scratch the inside of it. Then I'm going to carefully take the end of the rod, put it in the slide like this. Now I've got it down in there. What I do is I kind of figure out where the end is, and then I back it off a little bit like this. And put my fingers down here so that I don't poke a hole through my slide. And then I'm basically just going to work this butter muslin to the point where it's actually heating up the inner slide and polishing it. And you'll have to take my word for it, but this slide is pretty warm. This one that I haven't been rubbing the butter muslin in is still room temperature, cooler to the touch. That's a good sign. It looks like we got some stuff out. So we move to the other one. Get it cleaned up. It's pretty good. We're in good shape there. So then, go ahead and put our slide back together carefully. And I like to check it at this point before I do anything else, because I don't want to have to wipe away any slide treatment that I'm using. So I just check it. It's pretty quiet. Doesn't seem to be any catches, which is a good sign. And then what I like to put on my slide is actually this Yamaha trombone slide lubricant. I think it works really well. There's lots of different options out there, and you'll just have to find what works out best for you and your instrument. Then what I do is I'll actually move the slide out like this, and I find the stocking, which is kind of that little bump out at the bottom of the inner slide, and I'll just put some of this slide treatment down here on that. And there's lots of different ways of working it in then, but I just slowly kind of work in the slide treatment so that it's on all parts of the slide. And at this point you can also see if there's any places on the slide that feel like they're not working super great, and either address that with slide treatment, or you may have to take it to the shop. What I like to do is I put this stuff on, I clean off my trombone slide about once a week, and I don't actually apply that stuff the rest of the week. I just keep adding some water from a spray bottle to make sure that my slide stays nice and in good working order. And this is another way of checking to be sure that your slide's in good working order. You just put it down on a surface, and you can actually just move it up and down freely. And if you don't have any catches, if your outer slide doesn't catch, then you're in really good shape. So then you should be in pretty good shape with a good working order trombone where your valve doesn't clank around too much, not a whole lot of noise coming from that, and the slide's in good shape so that you can get to the positions you need to quickly and have a very good audition. So I hope this helps just a little bit. Please let me know if you'd like some help with any of this, or if you'd like a lesson. We can certainly talk about some other ways of making sure that your trombone's in good working order and help you out with those all-state auditions. Thanks.